Matt from TAFE New South Wales. In this short video we'll be looking at basic plotting from the AutoCAD 2020 software, and that will be from the model space, so the black screen. Later on we'll go on to do more advanced plotting, including plotting from model space at scale and also plotting from paper space using viewports and layouts. But that's a topic for another video. So all we're going to be looking at today is I'll be using this example drawing that that you see here next to me. It's roughly 100 millimeters square. So one of the first things I'm going to have to do is work out what size page that's going to fit on. So to do that, what we're going to do is I've pre-created some standard page sizes. I should also mention, filming this during the coronavirus lockdown, so if you hear kids screaming or dogs barking in the background, that's just life at home. So right, so get on to this. What I'm going to do is just turn on the border layer, because I've actually got in here the two standard size pages that we might consider for this drawing. That's either going to be A4 or A3. Obviously, if we will put it onto the larger A3 page, we're going to have a lot more space around around the drawing, which might be needed if there was going to be a lot of notes or annotations, tables, parts lists, that sorts of things, or other parts that are also going to be put on this drawing. But if it's just the one object going on the one drawing, then A4 should be fine. Keeping in mind, we also need to make sure that we leave room for a title block in the bottom right hand corner of either sheet size, so we have to make sure that we leave room for that. So this tells us that A4 sheet at 1:1 scale is going to be the best way to print this. So I'll just turn that layer back off again so you don't have to look at that anymore. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is insert a title block. We've already decided that we're going to print this on A4. Now, unlike later videos and later lessons when we're plotting at scale or plotting using paper space settings, 1:1 scale from model in model space is a fairly straightforward. Essentially, we work out what size sheet's going to fit over the object, and if the object's too big or too small, then we have to go to something a little bit more advanced. So this is deliberately kept really simple. So I'm going to go up first to insert a title block. Now I've got an A4 title block pre-created. So if I go up in the Home tab, we can go to the insert block here on the block panel, or we can go to the insert ribbon or tab on the ribbon and go into the insert command there. They're both exactly the same. It's just two different places to access the same command. Now when you click the down arrow on this, it actually shows this grey area here on the screen. Now if you've got existing blocks in your drawing, whether it's another title block or whatever it is, they will actually show there. And if you want one of those, all you have to do is click on it, and that's the block that you'll insert. If you don't have any blocks, or if you need a different block, such as in the example with this one, we need to go to blocks from other drawings. Left click on that, and it brings up a new little dialog box, which can be docked or moved onto a second screen, but a new little dialog box which we can use to actually access other drawings. So what we do is, if we click on this little one button there, we can actually go through and find the drawing that we want. And it's a DWG file we're looking for, and the one I'm looking for is the A4 sheet. Gives us a preview. You can see there that it's got a border and a title block built into it. So if I click open on that, it brings it into this area here. What I can then do is click and drag it out onto the screen, which is when it's handy to have this docked on a different screen if you've got a second screen. So if I left click and drag that out, you'll see that follows us out, and all I do is place it over the object, left click, release, and that puts it into position. Now the great thing about this is that it actually selects as one object, so if you want to move it later on, it's very easy to do that. So once you've got it on the screen, it's pretty good. Just quickly, some of the other things that you need to be aware of here. Down the bottom of this down the bottom of this this panel that comes out, the insert block panel. And by the way, this is kind of new for AutoCAD 2020. So previous versions have had a slightly different interface. So what we need to do here is make sure insertion point is checked, because you will select that on screen. Make sure that scale is unchecked and the values are set for 1 for X, Y and Z. Make sure rotation is unchecked and the value is set to 0. We don't need to repeat placement here because we're only putting 1 into the drawing. So we keep that unchecked, and explode will explode the block as soon as it comes in. If you do that, you no longer get the functionality of being able to select the border as all one object and manipulate it, move it, etc. more easily. So we leave that unchecked as well. So just the insertion point checked, leave everything else the way it is. Make sure we've got 1s in X, Y and Z for scale values. I can close that now, or I could move it onto a second screen or out of the way. And you'll see what we've got now is the object placed here. Now, because I've already got my dimensions and everything on, I can move this around until the drawing sits nicely in the middle of the sheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the corners of our border here as the area that we're going to print or plot. So this actual sheet is larger than the border. So our sheet size has got about a 10mm gap in this particular circumstance. It's been designed with a 10mm, so it's 10mm in from each edge of the dimensions of the actual page. That means we have to make sure that it's centered properly on the page when it plots, otherwise it'll be in the wrong position and you end up with, parts of the border being cut off and that sort of thing. So the next thing that we'd normally do now is we'd fill this in using text. So I'll just do this really quickly. I'm just going to use single line text. So I'm just going to put here. I'm going to specify the height of 2.5, which is correct. Rotation angle is 0, and the text is my own initials. Now, in order to cheat, I'll just create one of those and then copy, and I'll move that into all the others that I need to have text in. So then I'll go through and put text. Now, because we're printing at a particular scale, we need to put a scale value in here. If you plot something out and it's not to scale and it has a scale value, it's wrong. If you plot something out and it says not to scale, or NTS, which is a really popular draftsperson's cop-out, but it actually is to scale, you've gone to all that trouble for absolutely no reason. So it's important that whatever you plot is reflected in that box. Okay, drawing number, let's just make something up, and title, what's a common one? Bracket, that'll do. Okay, title should be a little bit bigger. That's 2.5mm text. So I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to, where it says, and I've just got to move a box out of the way there that you can't see, go into the height there, and I might make the title 3.5, enter. Okay, now the other thing too is that this text should be on the correct layer. So I'm going to pick those 4, and they're going to be on the text 25 layer because they are 2.5mm high text, and the title is going to be on the text 35 layer because that is 3.5mm high text. Okay, so we're doing that. Has essentially got this ready to print out. Now we need to actually go through what is essentially the guts of this particular video, which is the actual plotting process. I'll close that properties panel, and now what we want to do is go to plot. So a number of ways of doing that. Control and P will take you to the plot dialog box. You can also come down here to the tabs at the very bottom left of the screen, the model and layout tabs. Right click on the model tab, and you can go to the plot dialog box from there. You can also come up here to the quick access toolbar. If it's been set up properly, you'll be able to access the plot command by left clicking that there, or under the big A, the action button at the top left, very top left hand corner, you can come down to that and come down and select print. You can just click on print, that'll do a normal plot. You've also got a number of different options there as well, but just the normal print. So if we activate that, the next thing we see is our plot dialog box. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select the printing device. Now this is really important because the page size available will depend on the printing device. If you're trying to print a large format A1 or AO drawing, but you set up your printer plotter as a little A4 laser printer, then you're not going to have the sheet size available in order to do your drawing, to do your plot. So make sure you set up the plot device that you're actually going to be using, because then it'll give you all the correct paper size options. So this one here, I'm actually going to do this as a PDF because actually no, I'll just do this as my little home inkjet printer, which is just a little A4 printer. This is an A4 page, so that'll be fine. So I'll set that up there. Okay, the next thing we need to do after we've selected our plotting device is to pick our paper size. If I click this drop down now, you'll see there's lots of sort of different sizes and stuff in here. Under the Australian standards, we use the A series. So A4, A3, A2, A1. Each one is double the area of the previous one. It goes right up to AO and AO oversize. But that's under the Australian standards, drafting standard AS 1100. They're the sheet sizes that we use. So I'll pick A4 from here because that's the sheet size that I want. Then I need to specify the plot area. So that's the area that's actually going to be plotted out. Now, if I leave it at default and hit display, it's going to try and print everything that you see here on the drawing, including all this vacant space around the outside. So we definitely don't want that option. The best one to use in this particular circumstance is the window option. The first time I click this dialog box will disappear, and what it's doing is asking me to select a rectangular area which will define the area to print. So left clicking on window, and then essentially it's like drawing a rectangle. Just pick one corner and then the diagonally opposite corner, and it doesn't matter which one you pick first or what direction you go in. And that will then set that up for us. Now you'll notice here this little black coloured preview in the middle of the dialog box. Now you'll see that there's red lines around that and things look a bit weird. Now that's because we haven't gotten through the rest of the settings yet, but we need to be coming back to this to make sure that it's correct before we finalise this print. Underneath our, and sorry by the way before I continue, if you decide you want to select a different window to print, just click the window button there and you can click a different area and it'll take you back to where you were. Okay, so the next thing you do is to hit center the plot. Okay, now that's really important, and these numbers here, which we can't change but are greyed out, they're also really important. But again, because we haven't gotten through to the end of this process yet, they're not really telling us the full story. The fact that one of those numbers is so high at 17.19 tells me that there's something going wrong. Alright, so if it's already flagged that there's a setting that isn't right in this yet. So we'll continue on. The next thing to do is to set the plot scale. That's here, and what we want to do is absolutely is uncheck fit to paper. Because I specified a scale of 1 to 1, I have to make sure my plot is actually at a scale of 1 to 1. So uncheck fit to paper and then change the scale by clicking next to the word custom here to 1 is to 1. Now as soon as I've done that, you'll see that this preview has changed and these numbers here have changed. They're still not correct, but that changing that setting has made those changes well. And we're not quite at the end of the process yet. The next thing is we come right up to the top left here, and it's the plot style table. Now this is terminology that's left over from our old essentially they were like CNC or robotic drawing machines called plotters. They used actual pens, and those pens were assigned by number, and the different pens could be different colours and thicknesses. So it's a bit of that term's a bit of a hangover from that old technology, but essentially what we want to do here is pick whether we want this to print out in colour, in grayscale, or black and white. Now, generally speaking, with most CAD drawings, 2D drawings, we want to print them out in black and white. The reason for that is that if they are photocopied or scanned or faxed or anything like that, then they will reproduce better if they're black and white. Secondly, any light colours are extremely hard to see and read. So any yellows, light blues, light greens or greys are extremely hard to read. So you don't want them coming out colour. So what we use is monochrome. The monochrome plot style table means that everything will be black ink on a white page. Regardless of what colour it shows as on your screen, it'll come out as black. Grayscale means that it will be grey scaled, so light colours will be light grey, dark colours will be dark grey, black will be black. That still means that light colours come out very faintly on the page. And if we pick the AutoCAD CTB or the none option, it'll print in full colour. Sometimes that's what you want, but generally speaking, especially for our small exercises, and if you're using home printers and that sort of thing, monochrome's definitely the preference. If it asks you to assign this plot style to all layouts, answer yes, although at this stage it doesn't actually matter what your answer because we're not using layouts. Further down from that, you'll see shaded viewport options. We just leave these as the default settings show, so don't make any changes here. Also in the plot options, we don't need to change any of the plot options here either. Right down the very bottom, and you'll see that our numbers over here, bottom left hand corner, and our preview here has still got red lines and things on it. Doesn't look right yet. That's because this very last setting needs changing, and that is to change our drawing orientation from portrait to landscape. And you'll recall that my title block is in landscape orientation, so that's why we need to use this one. So change that to landscape, and immediately you'll see that our preview now shows that hatched drawing area in the middle of the page with no red highlights around the outside. Also, if we go down here to our plot offset, you'll see that the two values are small and positive, and that's what we want to see. We wouldn't want those values to be any more than about 10, and they could even be negative numbers, but as far as they got no lower than about -4 to -6. So anywhere between about -5 and +10 is fine for those numbers, but small positive numbers is really what we'd prefer. So once we've done all that, it's really important to preview your drawing, just to make sure that you've got everything right. Hit preview, and you'll see what we've got here is the drawings come out. We've got a nice even space around the outside. You'll see that this watermark that's produced here on the drawing, that's because I'm at home and I'm using the education version of the software. If I was using a commercial version, you simply wouldn't see that. And you'll also see that we've got lines of different thicknesses. That's all been set up as part of the layers, which we'll get onto later on. But this is sort of what we're looking for. Also, just double check to make sure you can see and read everything, just to make sure that there's nothing you've forgotten. Once you're happy with that, you can either hit the escape key, or you can come up and you can click the little cross there, and it comes back to our plot dialog box. Now, importantly, if we click apply to layout, that'll actually save all these settings. So next time we want to print this drawing, all we have to do is hit print, and if we're at the same place and using the same printer and the same scales, everything will already be set up for us. So click apply to layout, and that saves all those settings, and then we click OK. Now, my printer just here has just started up, so I'll have to get you to trust me that that's going to work, but that's essentially the printing process. Couple of important things to remember. Firstly, make sure you bring your title block in, the correct title block, and make sure you keep everything at 1:1 scale. That's critically important. Secondly, make sure you get everything spaced out and looking neat and tidy on the drawing before you proceed. When you get to actually doing the plot, make sure you set up the correct paper sizes, and also make sure you keep an eye on those X and Y values in the bottom left hand corner, and also the little preview that's given in the middle of the page to make sure it's going somewhere. Always preview a drawing before printing it, otherwise you could be wasting paper or time or ink, and the bosses don't like you wasting any of that. And finally, when you print your first drawing out and you're happy with it, stick it on the fridge. You should be proud of it. So I hope that's certainly helped everybody here. I hope that that gives you a little bit of guidance into printing out your first drawings using really basic 1:1 plot from model space techniques in the AutoCAD 2020 software. If you need to, make sure you review this video as often as you can. Get on to your exercises, and each exercise that you do now, you should aim to plot it out. If you don't have a plotting device at home, you can plot to PDF. The process is exactly the same, but what you produce is a computer file instead of a hard copy. If you are submitting work via email or online, then we would expect you to be doing that in order to produce something that's plotted, which you can then submit to us for grading and assessment. Have fun with plotting in AutoCAD. I'll see you in following in other videos. Thanks for your time.